I'm going to give you a demonstration on how to assemble your motor into the Wasp 12 motor cage. Wasp stands for Wonderfully Awesome Stabilized Platform, and you may ask yourself, well, is wonderfully even a word? Well, I'm here to tell you that it is. So let's get started. And one warning, my hands, well, let's just put it this way, I wouldn't make it as a hand model, so I apologize. Alright, so here we have a motor. This particular motor is an iPower 8017-120. This is a real popular motor for larger cameras, red camera, DSLRs like the 5D, Sony FS700, and the like. We've had a lot of success with this motor, so I decided to use it as an example to show you how to install your motor. So the first thing you do is take an Allen wrench and remove one of these standoffs. I'm going to choose this one. These are 632 screws. I'm going to pull these out. Now if you hear any weird sounds in the background, that's because I am doing this video at a park. I'm just enjoying the weather here at a park in Houston, Texas. Okay, so those are gone. We'll get this motor out of the way temporarily. So the next thing you want to do to install your motor is loosen up the bolts holding this top plate down. Now you only want to loosen them a touch, just enough so you can separate the top plate by about maybe a 32nd of an inch. So just a little bit. Maybe that's looks like about 1 millimeter or so. Okay, so that's done. Next thing we do is slide the motor in, like so. And on this assembly, on this design, we've included a slot for passing your motor wires through. So I want to take this 1/4 screw out. Loosen these little 632 screws up. Slide the motor in, which this will allow you to pass the wires into the slot, and then you can temporarily tighten back the 1/4 screw and the two 632 screws. Alright, so the motor's in. Next thing we're going to do is put this standoff back, fasten it back down. Okay, your next step is to take the bag of fasteners that we include with the cage, and what we've got in here are 8 3mm by 6mm long stainless steel cap head screws and 4 2mm thick M3 spacers. And we also have some lock nuts in here. You don't necessarily have to use them, but if you want to, they're here for you. Up to you. It's not completely necessary. Alright, so we're going to take 4 of the screws out. We're going to line up the 3mm bolt circle with the slots on the back of the cage. Oop. These are 3mm screw holes, or tapped holes rather, and they're sitting on, I believe, a 33mm bolt circle. Now we've designed this cage such that there is slots for the motor instead of holes. That way you can use an assortment of different motors. And you're not confined to one range of motor, one product line. Okay, so go ahead and tighten these up. You want to torque these properly. For the purposes of this video, I didn't torque them down very tight, but you want to get these nice and tight. Okay, so the motor is mounted to the bottom face, the bottom plate. We've got the wire passing through. Okay, your next step, after you've joined the motor's bottom mount to the bottom plate of the cage, is you want to join the top face of the motor to the bottom face of this hub. And that's what the remainder of these screws is for. And in addition, what these spacers are for. Now, we have to use these spacers on this motor because the motor's 26mm and the distance from the bottom of this hub to the bottom face of this cage is 28mm. So we're going to make up that difference with these spacers. Now, some motors, you're not going to need it. There's motors that are exactly 28mm tall, so you won't need the spacer. There's some motors that are thinner, so you'll have to provide your own spacers for those particular motors. Alright, so what you have to do is you have to pass the screw through this little hole in the bottom fork here into the hub, and then you torque it down. But before you do that, you need to get the spacer between the motor and the hub. So place a spacer on the top face of the motor like this, then use your hand or a tool of some kind to wedge it between the motor and the hub. And now that it's positioned correctly, you just rotate the hub to the correct orientation. Whoop. And drop a screw in. And torque it down. Don't torque it down all the way. Just start it to run into the threads. Okay, and we'll do this for all four of the holes, of the tapped holes on this hub. Okay, so now we've got all four screws joining the hub to the motor. So we want to torque these down. Alright, so we've got those torqued down correctly. Alright, so your next step, after you've got all 4 screws joining the motor to the hub, is go back to these standoffs and make sure these fasteners here that join the top plate of the gimbal, or of the gimbal cage rather, to the standoffs are properly torqued down. And when I say properly torqued, don't overdo it. Don't strip these threaded holes. Just enough so it's tight, but not so loose that these screws vibrate out during flight if you're going to use this for an aerial application. Now you can go back through these screws and put Loctite. If you're going to use this for a handheld application, a hand rig, I don't really think it's necessary. But if you're going to use it in the air, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and put some blue Loctite on these, and especially on these here. Once you tighten this guy down, this clamp down to the carbon fiber tube, make sure to put Loctite on these. And so that's it. The motor is in the cage. Rotate it, make sure that everything's rotating smoothly, it feels good, there's nothing binding, and we hope you enjoy it.